clock has struck 3 a.m. The witching hour has begun. Are you ready to be initiated into the Black Magic Coven? Join your sisters, Liz,
Andrea,
Marissa,
and Kaylee,
as we meet to discuss the macabre, creepy, and sinister. We call upon the Four Corners to lead us into some of the most haunted forests in the world. So welcome everybody, welcome to a new episode of Black Magic Coven and the first official episode of season 2.
Whoop, whoop.
We're
back.
We're back. We are back, and we are coming back on Earth Day, so we thought that we'd do an episode that somewhat relates to Earth Day, and we picked spooky forests, basically. So we, all of us are gonna bring different haunted forests to you and describe them and let you know a little bit about their history and why they are so spooky. So, does anybody else have anything to add to what we're doing today?
There's a lot of spooky forests in the world. I feel like that's just, if you didn't already know that, there are so many haunted forests.
Mm-hmm. Stay out of the woods, kids.
Yeah. So, I am going to go ahead and start, and my forest is the Suicide Forest. It is also known as the Sea of Trees. It's also the Japanese word, which is Aokigahara. We're going to mostly go with Sea of Trees because I think it's the less intense title and also the one that I can pronounce. So the Sea of Trees is a forest in the northwestern flank of Japan's Mount Fuji. And it is a forest that grows on 12 square miles of hardened lava that was laid down by the last major eruption of Mount Fuji in 864 CE. So a long freaking time ago. And I don't know, I think that's pretty cool that there's a giant forest that's growing off of lava. I mean, which...
I had no idea that that was the case.
But I would just think, I didn't realize anything could grow out of hardened lava.
Yeah, I mean, I guess... It's been a very long time, so maybe that's why it's able to do that. I don't know how long it would take, but yeah, it's a very large forest, and also it's a very packed forest. So part of why I think it's kind of spooky is that the tree coverage of the forest is so thick that even at noon you can hardly find a bright spot in the forest. So it's very, covered no matter where you are in the forest because of how many trees there are. So trekkers and hikers often carry a long plastic tape to mark their way so that they can find their way out again because it's so compact and also just twisty and turny, and I think people just get lost a lot. It's just a common thing in there, and so that's their way of fixing that. So if you've ever seen pictures of the Sea of Trees, you might have seen pictures of yellow tape or pink tape or whatever, and that's that tape that hikers use as their way out.
Personally, I'm not trying to go into a forest that if my strip of tape falls apart, suddenly I'm lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems a little sketch, but that's how I feel about a lot of that kind of stuff. Like the movie The Descent, I'm always like, why would I want to do that?
Oh, it's so good.
I mean, it's a great movie. I love
It's a great movie, yeah.
But I hate that girl for being like, I want to discover a new cave. And I'm like, why though?
Oh, yeah.
Why?
No. And then name it after the girl whose husband I fucked behind her back as a thank you. It's like an I'm sorry. And it's like, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
That's not how the girl code works.
I think that's the best description of that movie I've ever heard, though.
Yeah, I just, I will never understand. I mean, it takes a very specific person to want to do something where there are so many risks involved. There's plenty of places I can go that a million other people have been and they've safely returned. So,
yeah.
I want a tour guide and a lot of people around.
Splunking?
Yes.
Yes.
Is it splunking?
Yeah, that's the
Is that what
cave.
it's called?
Yeah, that's the cave exploration.
Okay. Yeah, I never want to do that.
Yeah.
I have no desire.
No, especially after watching
me.
that movie.
Yeah, I know.
And some of the real world things that have happened with caves. I mean, it's terrifying.
People have been stuck for sure and going off and exploring different parts. Yeah, I like, fairly mapped out places with, forests and anything involving nature,
Yeah,
really.
I want
where
a
you don't have
trail.
a lot of control.
I want a trail.
Yes.
I want it to be clear. I want it to
I want to know
mark-
I can just turn around and come right back to where I came from,
Exactly.
If that happens, though, because I think in some of these places, like like Blair Witch, like you go down a trail and then you turn around and you're on a different trail. So what then? You need cell phone signal.
Yeah.
Cell
Yeah.
phone signal is important.
Which is
True,
funny
but
that
you
you
could also
mentioned that
lose
because I mean,
that.
once we get into the pop culture references, in both of the movies I watched that reference this forest, their cell phone signals don't work, and they say it's because they're so close to the mountain or whatever, and like it messes with the signal. I mean, of course, it's a movie, so they have to have cell phones not working, but
Right.
I also don't doubt that cell phone signals would be more difficult the further you get away from like normal civilization. So. But so the forest itself, other than just being kind of spooky because of how dark it is inside of it, obviously has some more sinister background, and it starts with having a historical reputation as a home to Yuri, which is a specific type of ghost of the dead in Japanese mythology. So some believe that the Yuri, which are souls that are filled with hatred, sadness, and desire for revenge that haunt the forest, are living inside of, or not living, I guess they're dead, but they're inside the sea of trees. And folklore claims that they are vengeful, dedicated to tormenting visitors and luring those that are sad and lost off the path.
So are these from the eruption? Like, are they angry and then like the trees grow out of the lava? See, I'm like coming up with theories in my head.
No, actually, the specific origin of Yuri, which they do mention, is according to legend, people brought their family members during famine to the forest to leave them to die there. So basically, if they had too many people to feed, they would take they would take like the elderly, anybody with a disability, anybody that was just
children.
Yeah, I mean people that just couldn't really
Extra children.
that couldn't help with the family, they would take them and they would leave them in the forest to die in order to save the food for the other family members. And so those that were left in the forest would slowly die due to starvation, and that's what turned them into the Yuri. And so that's why they're so, I mean, that's a pretty legit reason to be vengeful and hateful.
That's really
Yeah, 100%.
Oh my gosh.
So
Like, can you imagine knowing that's what is about to happen to you?
I know, right?
It's
Because
like, oh, they're just gonna leave me here to slowly die.
yeah, and I mean, I will preface that with that there's not like any specific known cases of this happening. It's just a story, a legend thing. So, I mean, it's become a huge part of the cultural background to this forest, and a lot of people talk about it, but it's not like they have a specific, oh, this happened to my grandma or something, So there's no specific cases where this happened. But yeah, that is how the Yuri have come to be in the Sea of Trees. So in recent years, it's become known as the Suicide Forest. And so that's what I knew it as, and that's what when we were talking about doing forest, I was immediately like, oh, I've heard a lot about the Suicide Forest, or I've at least heard it referenced a lot, so this sounds interesting to me. I want to read more about it. And so the reason that it's called the Suicide Forest is because it's one of the world's most used suicide sites. I don't know how accurate that is, because they, part of the thing is that they have stopped publicizing the numbers in attempt to decrease the association with suicide, because they're trying to, obviously that's not a great vibe to have for your forest. So I don't know how accurate it is to say that it's the world's most used suicide site, but it's up there. I know like another one is like the Golden Gate Bridge is also mentioned as like a very popular site for that. So there are actually signs at the head of some trails that urge suicidal visitors to think of their families and to contact suicide prevention associations, and like they have phone numbers there and everything. So they do try, I think, to stop people. It is one of those things where Japan has kind of a weird connection to suicide that a lot of countries don't.
We're saying that suicides are said to increase during March, the end of the fiscal year in Japan.
God, that's so depressing.
So basically, as far as Japan goes with suicide and their connection, it was a common thing, or at least in legend, it was common for certain samurais to actually have a ritual suicide if they didn't fulfill what their purpose was or their duty, or it was like an honor a code of honor type thing. And so sometimes in Japanese culture, suicide just isn't looked as negatively as it is in a lot of countries. And I mean, it is now, like, obviously
they wouldn't be damned to hell, kind of like in Christianity.
Yeah, I think like I would say America, you know, growing up in America, obviously suicide was always like really like that is the worst thing you could do. You know, I mean, it's just that's so horrible. Like, how could you be so selfish? You know, but there is somewhat of and I'm not an expert on this, obviously, so I'm not going to pretend like I know a lot about this, but. There is somewhat of a cultural difference with suicide in Japan than like here in America.
So I get all my knowledge from samurai movies, and like the harakiri was an honorable death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so a lot of people also, it's said that the suicides are increased in March, which is the end of the fiscal year in Japan. And so people that maybe don't feel like they've fulfilled their duty as like making enough money for their family or whatever, they just have failed in some way. That's, I think, they turn to suicide. It's, I would say, a majority, from what I read, it's a majority men that commit suicide in Japan. And I think that's mostly because they feel like they're failing their families in some way. Right. And so there's a lot of pressure. I think that's a fairly well-known thing about the Japanese workforce, is that it is very intense, and that there is a lot of pressure when it comes to the workload in Japan. And so I think that definitely affects the mental health of people in Japan. So I would say we're not doing that great in America either with it, but, you know.
I know, I was about to say, it's kind of on par with American culture in terms of, you know, overworking yourself and slaving away, and just, you know, the competition factor too, like always striving to like be the best and everything, provide. Yeah.
So, in 2003, this is kind of the last recorded times that they recorded how many bodies were found. So in 2003, they found 105 bodies, which exceeded the previous record of 78 in 2002. So it was on the increase. But then, like I said, they've really stopped publicizing the numbers of how many bodies they find in the forest. There is every year they have volunteers that do patrol the area. They make interventional efforts if they can, but I would say it's mostly to recover their remains, so that they can have a proper burial. So they're not going to be able to stop that many people, because I think most people aren't going to go if they see people there. They're going to go when it's quiet. As of 2011, the most common means of suicide in the forest were hanging or drug overdose. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely has a very dark past. And in the Japanese popular belief, if a person dies in a deep sense of hatred, anger, sadness, or desire for revenge, their soul can't leave this world and continues to wander, appearing to people affected by the spell or those who cross his or her path. So these souls are called Yuri. So again, I think the Yuri have multiplied in theory. They have multiplied because people use this forest to commit suicide, and obviously an act of suicide is mostly, I would say, due to anger or sadness. And so that's creating more of these souls that are now not able to move on, and so they kind of roam the forest. And they can be found in many modern cultural references, such as movies as well. Unlike Western horror movies, where the ghost wants something specific in order to be able to rest in peace, the Yuri wants nothing in particular. They just want to have their curse removed. So whatever that means. I mean, it's a less clear thing, I think. I mean, I think of like The Grudge and The Ring, and I think like they just feel like very different ghosts than like an American ghost story, I feel like. So I think those have definitely been inspired by this cultural reference to Yuri. So just to get into, before we wrap up, because really that's most of why this forest is considered spooky or haunted, is because it is used as a suicide location. It's definitely not really like a fun spooky, because it is true, and it's very sad to think that so many people go here to do that. The forest, I will say, when I see pictures of it, it is really pretty because of how dense the forest is. I think like I could see the appeal of like wanting to visit. I mean, it's right by the Mount Fuji, so I mean, like, there's obviously sights to be seen, but again, like we all said, we probably wouldn't venture too far into the forest.
No.
It has a few cultural references, but I was actually kind of surprised by that there wasn't more cultural references to this, especially in Japanese pop culture. But then at the same time, maybe they don't really want to talk about it. It's not really a happy thing, I guess. But there are 2 American films that are about this forest, The Forest, which came out in 2016, and I just watched that for the first time the other evening. Have any of you seen it?
I have not.
I have not.
Okay.
The Forest, yeah, I saw that.
It was pretty mediocre, I would say. I would say it's like the most American trying to do a Japanese movie ever, maybe. I mean, like, because there's no original. It's not like they're remaking a Japanese movie, so they don't have like good content to start with. And yeah, it's very weak. I was reading Letterboxd reviews for it after I watched it, and somebody mentioned that since it came out in January, it was very obvious that it was going to be bad, because in January, just like how people in Japan leave their elderly relatives to die in the forest, movie studios leave their horrible horror films to die in the month of January.
Oh no.
So, yeah, it was kind of a funny way to put it. But yeah, I would say there's nothing really worth watching about the forest. I think part of me even feels like it was maybe culturally like offensive a little bit. Like, I don't know. I just feel like they were using this story of a Japanese forest that has a dark past to funnel this weird white person narrative. I don't know. I just didn't really care about it, and I felt like it was pretty meh. Then the other film, which I had never heard of, so I remember seeing The Forest, and I've seen the poster, and like I remember when it came out and thinking, oh, maybe that'd be fun to see. But the other one came out in 2015, and it's called The Sea of Trees, and it has Matthew McConaughey, Ben Watanabe, and Naomi Watts in it. And I was like, how have I never heard of this? And it's an A24 movie, so I was like, wow.
Yeah, I saw that too, and I haven't seen it, but I saw a reference to it, and yeah, it completely skipped my radar. Was it good?
I would say it's better than The Forest, but it which doesn't say that much. But I also just wasn't that connected with it. It's kind of, so it was a drama. It's not like a horror film. But basically, Matthew McConaughey goes to, like, he literally gets, the movie opens with him getting a ticket to Japan, and he doesn't get a return flight, so you know why he's going. And he doesn't have any luggage, and he just he basically just gets a taxi to the forest. And he goes there to kill himself, and he's, like, sitting on a stone, and he's starting to take pills. But then all of a sudden, he sees another man in the forest who's, like, bloody, and is trying to find a way out. And so he kind of spends like a very long time of the movie trying to get out of the forest with this guy, because they both are lost now. And he's already started taking his sleeping pills, so that obviously affects him. But then all the while there's like flashbacks to his marriage with Naomi Watts. And I mean, by the end of the movie, I think you're supposed to, like, you know, think that they had a good marriage, and I feel like they never show anything good about their marriage. Like, it seems like the worst thing ever. Basically, she's horrible to him because she makes more money and he doesn't make enough money, and she's a drunk and, like, just rips him apart all the time. I don't know. It was a weird, like, movie because I didn't really totally feel like, oh yeah, they deserve to be together. I don't know. Like, I was like, I'd probably want to do that too if that was my wife. I don't know. That's a horrible thing to say, but I just, like, I don't know. She was not good to him. And I mean, not that, I don't know. He wasn't great either, but she definitely was not a very nice person. So, anyways, if you're interested in some pop culture references to that, those movies are both streaming, so you can watch them. One of them's on Netflix and one of them's on Canopy, which is the library streaming service if you don't use it. But anyways, there's also a anime called Tokyo Ghoul, which I actually did start back a while ago because I do love me some anime here and there. But
yeah, I heard good things about that, but I never watched it.
Blair and I tried to watch it, and it's so emo. Like, we were just like...
Is it really?
We were like, I don't know if we can do this anymore. I mean, it's just about a boy he ends up being half ghoul, half human, and ghouls are basically kind of zombies. They need to eat flesh to survive. And so he kind of just hates himself all the time. But there's a ghoul-only cafe, and they use bodies that they find in the Sea of Trees to feed the ghouls, to avoid actively killing people.
Interesting.
So yeah, anyways, I thought that was kind of an interesting reference. And then there's also a novel called Seicho Matsumoto, which is from 1960. And that novel refers to the popularity of the forest as a suicide spot. And many people blame this book for the rise in popularity of using the Sea of Trees as a location to commit suicide. And there have been people that have, like, bodies that have been found in the forest with a copy of this book with them. So basically people are not very happy about this particular novel because they think that it kind of led to there being an increase in suicides there. Because, I mean, once you put that idea in people's heads, I think people are like, oh, this is a place we should go. Like, as weird as that is. But yeah, so people blame that book a lot. And then my final pop culture reference, which I feel like we couldn't, go on without talking about, is the Logan Paul, the YouTuber idiot that
he covers everything.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, so for anybody that doesn't know, he had an excursion into the forest with the intention to camp there overnight because he was like, this is the spookiest forest in Japan. Like, we're gonna go there to camp. Whoa. And then while he was there...
Whoa. He also... The way he's dressed going into that forest...
Oh my god.
Just feels, like, disrespectful in itself.
I know. He's wearing,
What's he wearing?
He's wearing one of those alien from... it's the alien from Toy Story. It's like a hat that looks like that alien's head.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, it's a very ridiculous whole thing that he's wearing, but...
I'm trying to remember, because I think he has a brother too, but like one of them started boxing, and that's all I know about them is because they did like an undercard on the last Tyson fight.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
but I don't know if that was him.
I think the brother is the one that boxes,
okay.
But I could be wrong. It's Jake Paul. I'm sad that I know that, but I do. But anyways, Logan, while in the forest with his group of vlogging friends, actually encountered a dead body that was hanging from a tree. And they filmed a video with the body in the video. And
wow, what a douche.
Yeah.
How could you ever think that's okay? I just cannot believe, yeah.
And so obviously he got a lot of backlash from the video after so not only did he film it, but then he edited it and uploaded it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like he blurred out the face, right?
Yeah.
Like he thought that would make it okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's gross.
So basically, I mean, and you have to think most of his viewership is young people. Like, it's probably like 10, 12-year-olds, which I mean is like sad enough as it is, because I don't think they should be watching his videos, period. But I mean, that is just so messed up. So yeah, anyways, of course he had to have a YouTuber apology and all that stuff, and he took the video down. But yeah, that is I would say, as far as recent pop culture, that's probably the most well-known situation that's happened with this forest. And that is the Sea of Trees, also known as the Suicide Forest. So definitely not somewhere that I'm aiming to go right away. I do really want to go to Tokyo, but I can't say that my number one destination is the Sea of Trees, because it does have definitely a very dark background. So
yeah, for sure.
I think there was a Vice episode that they did about the Sea of Trees, and they went through there and stuff. And there was a guy who is in charge, or some organization or something goes through there and like goes and checks on people, or goes to see if they find anybody, like if anyone needs help, or if he can help anybody, or just like looking for bodies.
Yeah, they do that.
People who like
that's a yearly thing they do.
Ugh, that's sad.
That's horrible.
All right. Well, on a lighter note,
we're all sad now.
Well, I mean, I figured we'd start the episode with mine, and then that way we can get like a little more fun spooky maybe down the line.
There we go. Yeah, no, totally. I'm into that. So I chose the Black Forest to look into. It's located in Germany, and let's see here. I've always wanted to go to Germany. I have not made it over there yet, but I decided to choose that one just to kind of explore it a little bit. So it's a large forested mountain range in the state of, pronouncing German, bear with me, Baden-Württemberg in southwest Germany. So it's a portion, it's actually pretty large. It's oblong in shape. It's about 100 miles, and breadth, like the length of it is about 100 miles and the breadth of it is about 30 miles. So there's lots of little towns in this area, or villages. There's tons of hiking trails. It's not just one particular spot. It actually takes up a lot of land. And let's see. So some of the notable things that have happened in that region, they had the uprisings that preceded the 16th century German Peasants' War that originated in the Black Forest. And there's also remnants of military forts that date back to the 17th and 18th centuries, especially on the mountain passes. So it's mainly rural, but they do have scattered villages throughout the area and a few large towns. It also is, I believe, it's in like the southwestern part of Germany. And the name Black Forest is basically because of the large amount of pine and fir that are there. It blocks out the sunlight, and that's one reason why it's considered to be so enchanting or spooky. There's also a large amount of fog that persists throughout the region as well. And people go there, travel there. They hope to see ghosts, kings and queens, werewolves, witches, dwarves, magicians. It's basically like known for its folklore and fairy tales. A lot of that ties back into the Grimm brothers, or the Brothers Grimm with their fairy tales. Yeah, so that forest actually inspired them to write Hansel and Gretel, Rapunzel, and Sleeping Beauty.
Oh, wow.
I'm just saying about Shrek and like the fairy tale forest. Like, we're gonna go there and it's gonna be just like that.
Yes! Oh, I wish. Sounds lovely and hilarious. But there's actually a trail that you can find in the Black Forest that is supposedly the trail that inspired Brothers Grimm to write Hansel and Gretel, that they like walked through to find the witch's house. So that's kind of fun. Let's see here. One cool thing about this region too is that they're known for wood cutting and glass blowing in particular, and it's where the cuckoo clock originated. So there's tons of cuckoo clocks everywhere, and there's like in this one location they have this shop called House of 1,000 Clocks, and it's
I want to go there so bad.
not to be confused with House of 1,000 Corpses,
Yes.
but
A much happier version.
Yeah.
much happier. And yeah, it's pretty cool. They're all really ornate, and I don't know, the woodworking that goes into that is just really neat. And it does kind of look like a fairy tale. If you look at pictures of this place in this region, there's so many castles, even the ones that are kept up really well that you could go tour. They look beautiful, but there's also some that are like decrepit and older that kind of like ruins. But there's at least like 10 castles in that region that you could go to. And in between, the little villages are all like, I don't know, it kind of looks like little gingerbread houses. The architecture there is just really cool. So I can see how, you know, the folklore and fairy tales have been inspired heavily throughout that part of Germany, especially. And so I guess it's like the forest is typically known as an escape or like a place of magical refuge. And so in folklore particularly, but it's also like known as a place of transformation. So in a lot of the Grimm's fairy tales, the hero apparently always goes into the forest. You know, it's not itself enchanted, but it contains like enchantments and being outside of the normal human experience. And that's where the axe, you know, that's where it acts as a place of transformation. So that's kind of where it has its magical, I guess, qualities. But there's a couple of cool stories as part of the folklore there. There's this one that was one of my favorites that I found because I could relate to it, and it's called The Legend of Yberg Castle, Yberg, and it's a myth of this ancient castle in the area that tells of fair ladies who appear in the night, which, if you know me, I'm so pale I practically glow in the dark.
Me too, Marissa. Me too.
And then it talks of these ladies and then of unusual bowling games on the first Monday of every month, which I could get down with that, but
like, so the ladies that come out at night bowl?
Yes, they're in like a bowling league at the castle.
That is the cutest spooky thing. You're like, what are the ghosts doing tonight, honey? Oh, they're bowling.
Oh, it gets better. And in the castle, there's word of a mysterious vault that no one can find, which is filled with delicious wines.
What?
I know. It's like, that's my kind of myth.
Coven trip.
Like,
I just get to bowl and drink wine.
Yeah.
Count me in. In a forest.
At night.
In a castle, right? Like,
yes.
Yep, I'm in.
This is a castle.
Yeah,
so this is a particular legend that stood out that people try and like go see the fair ladies who appear at the night. But,
so can you tour, like, is the castle like owned or privately, or is it just like a...
I am not sure. Let's see here. It's a ruined hilltop castle, but I think there's like a restaurant there that you can go eat at. I'm not sure. I don't think you can stay there, but I think you can like go and tour it.
We could like go eat and then put a tent in the woods and wait until nighttime.
Yeah. It's not super ornate, or it kind of just looks like a fort. It doesn't look cool really, but you know, it has a story behind it, so whatever.
I'm still down.
Yeah, no, totally. So there's also the myth of Der Grossmann, which translates to the tall man, and he was described as a guy who's really tall and disfigured. His eyes were nothing but white spheres, and he also has more than 2 arms. So he would apparently follow bad children who made the mistake of entering the Black Forest. He would chase them until they confessed their bad deeds to their parents, or he caught them.
Jeez.
And yeah. And apparently during the time when this sort of originated, like children disappearing was actually pretty common, and during the 16th century. So, and I feel like that kind of goes hand in hand with folklore in general, because, you know, everything is such a warning for kids, you know, don't do this, don't be this way or whatever, like in order to keep them, I don't know, like well behaved. But just the visual imagery kind of reminded me of Slender Man a little bit, but a little creepier. So, and there was a movie called The Tall Man, I think, with
there is.
Jessica Biel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw that once a long time ago, but I don't know if there's a direct correlation there to this German myth or folklore legend. I'm not too sure. It very well could be, but I'm not sure if it's like Americanized or if, because I don't think that took place in Germany. But
no, I don't think so.
Yeah, so that's one of them, but it's really just like stories around fantastical creatures. I mean, people tell tales of wizards and fairies, nymphs. It's not so much like that they're hoping to see them all the time, but it's just like being within the area, I suppose, kind of transports you to, you know, those types of experiences. There is another weird one or kind of creepy one is the Mummelesi. God, so bad. That's a legend of a king who lives beneath the water and drags down women to his kingdom under the water as well. So he basically just is like, it makes me think of like Ariel's dad.
Yeah, King Trident.
Big, you know?
Yeah.
King Triton just like goes and kidnaps women and drags them down to his lair
Yeah, that's
under
spooky.
the water. Those were the creepiest ones that I really found.
But does he like wine and dine you, or he just like kidnap? Like if he's gonna like a male siren is what I'm picturing. That I'm okay with, but just the like like dragging, kicking, and screaming, that's not cool.
Like, can it be
No,
like
like-
Jason Momoa dragging me under the water?
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
I mean, maybe I'd be cool with that.
Aquaman.
I'd take that.
There was another location like Mummel Lake, which I think is not that far from the other legend, or it might be the same lake, but it was saying that water nymphs are supposed to live in the depths of that lake as well. So, I mean, there's not like any sightings particularly for the Black Forest. It's mostly just where a lot of lore and fairy tales originated, and people go there for that reason. But no one's really like caught anything that I've seen or read about, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So, but it's really beautiful. I mean, if you look at photos of this region, a lot, like they said, the villages are super cute. I totally want to go to the clock store and go hang out in all these castles. It looks amazing. It's also the place where, I don't know if y'all are ham fans. I mean, I'm more of a turkey person, but like if you like ham, like Black Forest ham, they're known for that.
I'm too dumb to put that together. Wow, that is delicious.
Yeah, so
Oh, what about Black Forest cake? Because that is like one of my favorite cakes.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
that's
Interesting.
where that comes from.
So we can have a picnic
Mhm.
of Black Forest ham and cake while we're waiting for the pretty ladies to come out and bowl.
Yes, and we have to get a cuckoo
Yes.
clock.
Obviously.
There's also Black Forest gnomes as well, but
What?
there wasn't. Yeah, they're just like chilling, hanging
Aw.
around, walking around. So
This place sounds
yeah.
amazing.
I know, it's really cute. I actually really enjoyed looking into it. It's nothing really terrible, you know, or bad has happened there. It's just a lot of like old, like
It's just full of
17th,
cool
18th
creatures.
stories. Yeah, full of little creatures, and it just looks honestly really precious and magical. So I would definitely love to go there one day.
That's fun.
Heck
Much,
yeah.
much more fun than mine.
Well, if you read like the Brothers Grimm, the original stories for Hansel and Gretel and Rapunzel and Sleeping Beauty, I mean, those
fucked
stories
up,
are
yeah.
dark. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
they're not happy.
they're not the Disney version. I think Hansel and Gretel, the original one that they wrote, was a situation like you were talking about, Liz, where the stepmom, I think, like sends the kids into the forest to die.
Yeah,
because she
can't
doesn't
afford
want to take
yeah,
care
she
of
can't,
them.
like, take
Yeah.
care of them anymore.
Yeah, so it was one of those kinds of situations, which is kind of interesting culturally, because I mean, you know, that happens everywhere, but they were definitely sent off into the woods to not return.
Have you guys read any of them? Because Barnes and Noble
few of
has like a big, like leather-bound, beautiful edition, and I don't know how like
cool.
how good the translation is, but it was like $20, and I was thinking about picking it up. I should probably do that.
Yeah, it'd be worth
It'd
it.
be worth it, yeah. I mean, they're they're really interesting to read, and they're quick reads too. So
nice.
Even if you just like read one, keep it by your bedside or
and just like read a story. Yeah,
yeah, they're good. But I don't know, Kaylee, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about. Hold on, I listened to how to pronounce this. It's Hoia Baciu.
Okay.
Baciu.
There you go.
In Romania, just outside of Transylvania. It's located in Cluj, I think was how it's pronounced, Cluj County, Transylvania, which is in the northwestern part of Romania. So I found a couple varying things, but for the most part, I read the forest covers about 700 acres of land and is often referred to as Romania's Bermuda Triangle because of all the disappearances. And it has also been named one of the world's most haunted forests because of all of the strange and terrifying events. So aside from the events, which we'll get into in a second, what makes this forest so creepy upon like entering it is, of course, it's dark. I don't think it's as dark as, like, the trees aren't as dense as Marissa and Liz's forest, but the trees grow in a bizarre way. So they don't grow upwards, but they bend and spiral in different ways. And stranger yet, the trees all seem to turn in a clockwise direction, the way they grow.
I've seen photos of that, and it is very odd.
Yeah, if you look up photos of the trees, they're super interesting and unlike anything I've seen. And it's interesting because almost all the trees grow that way. So scientists have been out to the forest to examine the growth patterns, but have been unable to figure out why exactly they grow in such an erratic fashion. So there's also a dead zone in the forest. So I've seen conflicting things. I think a lot of sources say it's almost a perfect circle, but if you actually look at it on a map, it's not quite a perfect circle. But no vegetation can grow there. There's no trees. It's just basically a meadow where there's grass and that's it. Which is unusual because so many trees grow around the forest. The soil, again, was sampled, but it didn't reveal anything that would cause vegetation to not be able to grow. But this particular spot is where many of the sightings have been spotted. So two of the most popular stories. One legend speaks of a girl she was around 5 years old, who entered the forest and was lost for many years. And 5 years after she had disappeared, she re-emerged, appearing unaged with no memory of where she had been.
Like she was just fine?
And, yeah, she was fine. There's reports of her, like, she came out of the forest. She didn't appear dirty at all. Her clothes weren't damaged, even though she had been missing for years. And she didn't seem to have grown at all. She looked exactly the same as when she had entered the forest.
That's weird.
Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah. And then another story, which I've read on a few sites, that the forest is actually named after the shepherd. But there's another story that tells of a shepherd who entered the forest with his flock of 200 sheep, only to never be seen again. And no remains of him or his sheep were ever found.
That's a lot to lose.
Yeah, and you would think, like, if something had slaughtered them, you would find at least some kind of remains, whether it's blood or some entrails or something, you would think, with 200 sheep, but no, nothing. So apparently the forest is named after that shepherd that went missing. I didn't find any dates on those. Those are kind of legends that, it sounds like, from what I could tell, have always been told in the in the lore of the forest. There also have been UFO sightings in this particular forest. The forest actually first kind of started gaining fame in 1968 when a military technician named Emil Barnia was out in the forest with his girlfriend and some friends. It was a sunny day in August, in an afternoon, and his girlfriend noticed something weird. She kind of wandered a little away from the group a little bit and called him over. And when he approached her where she was standing, he saw a shining silver disc in the sky. And he was actually able to capture 4 photos of the object before it darted away. So you can Google Emil Barnia's photos and you can see the photos that he managed to capture. And obviously it's in 1968, so it's an older photo, but it's very clear that there's this like circular disc in the sky.
What do you think?
I mean, aliens.
Yeah.
I want to believe in aliens. If anything, I believe in aliens more than anything else, you know?
Yeah.
That's like
there's
the thing.
definitely more out there.
Yeah, that's the easiest thing for me to believe in when it comes to supernatural and paranormal and whatever else. UFOs, aliens just make sense to me. So they only saw the UFO for a couple of minutes, but the photos obviously live on. He was able to get them published in a local paper. A lot of folks, of course, speculated that it was like a weather balloon or like a lens flare, odd lighting or something. But investigators who had studied the photos looked into the area to see if there were weather balloons, blimps, or anything else that could have been in the sky, but they were unable to find any proof that something would have been in the area at that time. So, aliens? Probably. Absolutely. And that's like one of the things. I was reading a bunch of different sites, and it says a lot of people speculate that the space where they saw that specific, like the disc, was where that kind of patch of grass, nothing grows, no vegetation. I don't know if that's exactly true or if that's just stories kind of merging together over the years.
So it could be like a landing pad, and that's why nothing will grow there.
Yeah.
If you look at the images, it totally could be. It's so, I don't know, man. It's
and if you do look at the pictures, it does look like they're kind of in an area that has an opening.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't look like they're like dead center surrounded by trees. It looks like there's some gapping where they're at. So it could totally be that place.
I love how creepy the trees look too.
I know. The trees are super cool.
It's awesome.
They're very fascinating. So a few other strange events that have occurred. A lot of folks, obviously it's a pretty big tourist destination for people to venture into and explore, and it's actually near the city it's near is a pretty like bustling hip city. So it gets a lot of visitors to check out the area, so people will make a trip down to the forest. Folks who walk in with a quick scare, just to get a little quick scare, leave with unexplainable symptoms.
Oh, fuck that.
Many experience extreme anxiety, which I feel like could be chalked up to the stories. You know, you're super fucking stressed because you know there's all this spooky stuff that's apparently happened.
Yeah.
And they feel like someone is watching them while they're in the forest. Others walk out with scratches or bruises with no idea how they got them. Some people actually believe that somewhere in the forest is a portal that connects our world to another, which is why people have disappeared, or like why that little girl suddenly came back. Maybe she disappeared into a different world and somehow wandered out and found her way back to her original world.
Have you guys seen Dark?
Like those. Yes, I love Dark.
I've not watched it. It's like been on my list for so long.
So that, I mean, wrong country, but that's the first thing I thought of. Sorry, go ahead.
I've heard nothing but good things, and I need to watch it, and I just have yet to do it.
I need to watch it too. I've heard that it gets increasingly better as the seasons go on. So.
Yeah,
it's so well written and so well made. I love it.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was getting into, and I wasn't paying enough attention in season 1. I need to go back and rewatch it because I was like playing on my phone, and like you have to pay attention to the show. Like,
yeah, that's what I've heard, which I think is why I've put it off, because this year has been so like long anyway. I'm just like, I just want to watch something mindless sometimes. Okay, so Portal. Yep. So that explains the disappearances and odd behavioral changes. So some people say that they become extremely confused, paranoid. After leaving the forest, there's reports of people suddenly falling ill and getting rashes. So I read this really good story. It's just like a blog post by somebody named, hold on, let me find his name. His name is, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but certain parts of the story were really interesting. His name was Stuart Summers, who went and visited the forest. He essentially was just like traveling and ended up going to Transylvania. And he runs into, he's walking to his hotel, and he runs into some like Christian sister missionaries. And he kind of like, I guess he was from Salt Lake City or something. He just kind of like greets them and asks them if there's anything he should do. And they're kind of like, well, why didn't you make a plan? And he's like, well, I was just kind of hoping to travel without any sort of itinerary. I just want to travel. And
such a bro thing to say.
I know, right? He's traveling alone, whatever. So one of the sisters apparently says to him, you should go hiking in the forest outside of Cluj. We've heard it's beautiful and relaxing. And he was like, so he didn't think anything of it because he didn't know much about the forest. But after the forest, he was just like, what the fuck did she mean? This was beautiful and relaxing. So he essentially goes on this bus route. He decides to go down there. He finds it's the last stop on the route. And he exits the bus, and he like is essentially dropped off outside of an industrial complex that had since been abandoned. And Google says to like cut through it. The map says to cut through it to get to the forest faster. So he does that. And this part I found so interesting. He like encounters a man sitting on a cart being pulled by a horse, and he gives kind of a nod in the guy's directions, and he says his eyes darted away, and I kid you not, he used his right hand to cross himself while mumbling something under his breath. He crossed himself 2 more times while trying to get the horse to speed up. We never made eye contact. So this guy is going on a path to this forest, and he passes some locals.
That's welcoming.
Yeah, he also says a little further down the road, he encountered a woman in a vegetable garden. She jumped up from weeding the garden and quickly ran inside while repeatedly crossing herself. So he's like, cool, this seems bad. So then he eventually gets to the forest where the road ends, and he walks into the forest. There's not a trail or anything. And he says, immediately when he walks in, he starts to feel like a little uncomfortable, like something's kind of watching him or pulling him closer. And then he says, about 25 feet in front of me, something caught my eyes. He saw a ghost. So he says, I can only describe this ghostly presence as a glowing mist hovering a few inches off the ground. I quickly strained my eyes in the darkness to get a better look. The figure was about 6 feet tall and faceless except for 2 brightly illuminated eyes, and the eyes were staring right at me. An overwhelming feeling of malice struck me when I locked eyes with the ghost. So he essentially bolts, right? And then like he spends the next night reading about the forest, and there's more instances of he reads things. They report a severe fever, overwhelming fatigue, delirious thoughts, and the skin falling off their hands and feet. So apparently people have read this within 48 hours of departing the forest, and he's basically just like, what the fuck? And then he's like, 48 hours later, what will you know? Overcome with a severe fever. So then he's sick for a few days, and there's actually pictures of like his thumb. You can see the skin, like layers of the skin peeling off. It's not like super deep or anything. It just looks like dry skin peeling.
So I would be really curious to know though, like from somebody that knows like the foliage in that area, there are trees that are like poisonous to humans, and like if 100% gets on you or something, like that could cause that stuff. So I'm holding.
And he does say when he ran out of the forest, like he kind of references, you know, horror movies when people are tripping and falling, and he's like, why the fuck can't you just run? He's like, in that moment I was like, oh, I understand why they can't just run. But I thought this story was interesting because a lot of the stories I read were from kind of like ancient legends, say, and this story was written October 28th, 2020, and his experiences were July of 2017.
Yikes.
So that was kind of the most recent thing I found in reference to the story that wasn't in regards to older legends. So yeah, there's also people that have said ghosts have been spotted. Obviously, they'll hear voices, giggles, or screams of young women. Deer hooves have been seen or heard, like it sounds like something's clacking in the forest, but nothing's around them. They don't see any sort of animal. Orbs have been spotted floating near trees. Glowing green eyes and faces appear right in front of people.
Yikes.
So if we visit this place, I'm bringing coconuts to do like a Monty Python and freak people out.
Some people believe the forest is haunted by peasants who were murdered there long ago. So there's evidence of a settlement there dating back to the Neolithic period. Some evidence suggests that people originally settled there in 6500 BC, making it the oldest settlement in Romania. Wow. So a lot of people think, you know, old settlements means lots of people have died there. There was one guy named, what's his name? He was a professor, Adrian Patrut. I think maybe is how you say his name. He thinks there's a possibility that they may have been exposed to electromagnetic fields, but that's kind of a controversial topic. Some people that he says have electromagnetic hypersensitivity, and that can cause redness of the skin, tingling or burning sensations, fatigue, tiredness, concentration difficulties, dizziness, nausea, heart palpitation, and digestive disturbances. So that's pretty much the story of the forest. I looked to see if there was any sort of pop culture references. The only thing I could find was a movie I have not seen. It came out in 2016, and it's called The Devil Complex. Mm-hmm. And it follows a girl named Rachel and her team of filmmakers as they go missing in a Transylvanian forest. And essentially, people go searching for the crew. Her teacher finds a camera buried in the snow. And that's
there should be more.
I know, right?
That's like weird.
A lot of cool opportunities.
It really made me think of like Blair Witch style, like forest horror.
Yeah, for sure.
Forest horror.
Like getting lost and it's seeming supernatural, but not really knowing what's going on. Mm-hmm. So that's Hoia Baciu in Romania.
All right. So I'm going to take you guys to the Freetown Fall River State Forest in Massachusetts. I'm just going to say Freetown State Forest going forward because that's a mouthful. But it's a publicly owned forest covering more than 5,000 acres in the city of Fall River and Freetown and Lakeville. It's nicknamed the Cursed Forest of Massachusetts. So are you guys familiar at all with the Bridgewater Triangle?
No,
I'm not.
I am not.
So being a cryptid kind of UFO person, there's a lot of weird activity that's reported within this triangle, and the forest is like the southernmost peak of the triangle, so it is within the triangle, but it's one of the boundary lines, and so it's been associated with a lot of the same type of activity that goes on throughout the entire triangle, not just the forest. But within the woods specifically is what I focused on for this. There's been reports of blood sacrifices, UFOs, ghosts, black helicopters, orbs of light, disappearances, giant snakes, other non-natural creatures, poltergeist activity. There's just like pretty much anything paranormal or scary is happening in these woods.
It's like Cabin in the Woods. Yeah. They just all are there.
Okay, there's something to that because, that makes sense. So the government, that would explain the black helicopters.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's another, like a company that's running this. So going back, I kind of bounce around a little bit, but I think originally there was a lot of friction on this land between settlers and native people. Originally, the entire area belonged to the local Wampanoag tribe, but over many years the land was quote unquote acquired from them starting back in 1659. So over the years more and more land was taken or sold, but there was greedy chiefs that did not get proper consent from their tribe members. And then finally in 1907 Fall River took another 100 acres through eminent domain in order to secure the city's drinking water supply. So later in 1939, Massachusetts did return some of the land that was taken, but it only left them with their current reservation, which is 227 acres. So along with the Wampanoag and a lot of the lore there, I think my favorite part of all of this is that the forest is home to the Pukwudgies. And I did not know what a Pukwudgie was before.
Pukwudgie.
Yeah, so apparently if you are a Harry Potter person, you're gonna know
that's right.
what this is, but J.K. Rowling stole it from Algonquin lore, or borrowed it, didn't steal it. But they are a race of dwarf or troll-like creatures that are like 2 to 3 feet tall. They're like greenish in color and they can glow. They kind of look like upright porcupines almost, like all the little like drawings I saw, they're very cute, but they are like pranksters. In some stories, they do little things, just like tripping somebody or throwing a rock while you're like in the woods, like they'll scare you. But then in other lore, it's pretty vicious. They'll like attack people with spears and knives, push people off cliffs. They'll like make noises to lure you deeper in the forest.
That's brutal.
Yeah. So these little creatures are supposed to be known there, and there's random videos on YouTube, kind of like anything else in this area, where you see like a tree move and they're like, oh, there it was, did you guys see it? No. Yeah. I did find one photo that somebody had posted, and it really does look like a little tiny humanoid face about that height in the woods. But even the guy that took the picture said that if you're looking for something, you're gonna find it. And so if you're looking at a photograph, eventually your eyes will make something appear that's not actually there out of just the colors and shadows. So another cool place, if you are out there, is called Profile Rock or Joshua's Mountain. And Native American lore holds that it is the image of a Wampanoag chief, and that it stands where the chief's son died. But actually, it wasn't created until the 19th century. But people still report hearing voices, feeling presences, seeing evil-looking apparitions. There's also the apparition of a lone man that is seen quite often that sits atop the rock, and ghostly warriors that dance around it. So getting a little more sad, there is the ledge, which is called Assinet Ledge. And it is said that people that go there are instantly overwhelmed with some sort of sense of dread. And they're thinking that this contributes to the high number of suicides that take place in this location. There's one particular woman who was said to have been waiting for her boyfriend and he never showed up. So she jumped off the ledge, and that people see her quite often around the ledge.
That's spooky.
Yeah.
So we've got a ton of places to visit in this forest. There's also Hockomock Swamp. Early settlers called it the Devil's Swamp. And
I was about to say, I love that name.
Yeah.
But no, okay, I don't know. Maybe not.
Well, and a lot of the Hockomock Swamp lore was like older, like folk tales. But there's been everything from Bigfoot to like vicious red-eyed dogs and a pterodactyl-like creature.
What?
That, roams around the swamp, or flies around the swamp, I should say.
That's very cool.
So something that I found absolutely no basis for including, but it is on a lot of people's lists of events that have happened there. Apparently, at one point, President Ronald Reagan was flying like a small Cessna plane through this area and reported seeing strange lights and what he thought was a UFO. But like I said, I couldn't really find a ton of basis for that, but it was in a lot of the things, so I thought I would include it. So something that I had not heard of before, and I was actually kind of surprised. Are you guys familiar with the Fall River Cult?
No.
So there was a group of women that were found murdered in the woods. And it all started November of 1978 when the body of 15-year-old Mary Lou Arruda was discovered tied to a tree. Well, they instantly arrested this guy, James M. Cater, because he had a history and he actually was convicted of kidnapping and murdering her in 1979. Well, then in October of 1979, a 17-year-old sex worker, Doreen Levesque, was found wristbound with fishing line, and it's pretty brutal. She was tortured and stabbed, and at first they thought it might have been one of her clients. But then it comes out that her pimp was running this sort of satanic cult that he was bringing these girls into.
Jeez.
So right after that, there was another girl, a 22-year-old, reported missing. And her boyfriend was a piece of work. So police are interested in him. He's a pedophile, rapist, sadist. Like, he has a track record.
Jesus.
However, he has found Jesus.
Oh,
okay.
But when he's being questioned by police,
that makes everything better.
Yeah.
During questioning, the police are just sitting there, and he's talking about how like he was dating her. This guy is like, I want to say he was in his mid 40s, and there was question to Barbara's age. It listed her as 22, but I've also seen her listed as young as 18. I don't think that she was a runaway, so I'm not sure they knew for sure. But that he was a Satanist with her, and they were in a cult together, and he thought they were responsible for her disappearance. So he wanted to make sure the police knew that. So one of the girls, Karen Marsden, had said that this the guy that organized it was running the prostitution ring as a satanic coven, and they held nocturnal gatherings in the forest. There was another girl, 17-year-old Robin Murphy, who is very chilling in all of the police accounts as to how emotionless she is through the whole thing. And she ends up telling police that it was Andy Multias, which is the third girl's boyfriend, that the newly found reformed satanic or Satan worshiper, that it was she saw him kill her. So her story was full of holes. There wasn't a lot of evidence, but because of his history, they went ahead and arrested and convicted him of that murder. So as time goes on, this Karen Marsden, she's trying to get out of all this, and she's talking to the police, and she tells the police, if you find me dead, they did it. Well, lo and behold, she ends up coming up dead. And yeah, so it ends up being like a huge thing. There was a lot out there on it. I didn't want to go into it too deep because it is super graphic, and but it's a very interesting trial, and like the whole case. Epix is making I don't know if it's a movie or a TV series that's going to be coming out in May on this. I think it's really weird because I had never heard of it until this.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Yeah.
But there was like black mass gatherings in the forest. They would find mutilated like cows and goats. And one of the girls reported that they would use even stray cats, and they would take their blood and like do mock baptisms and things. And the police did find suspicious clearings. There would be animal blood, curiously arranged carcasses. So it kind of fed into it. And we got to remember too, at that time in the late 70s, early 80s, like satanic panic was rife and
full throttle.
Yeah. And this is not like Church of Satan. Like I hate saying like Satanist because people are gonna think I'm like, this is like stereotypical you see in the movies stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think it's important to differentiate that from the actual religion.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that was several horrible events happened there. There were 3 more murders. In 87, a transient was mistaken for an undercover cop and was murdered. And then in 2001, 2 men were found shot to death. There was also a Fall River man in 1991 assaulted, then a teenager in 1998. They have lots of hazardous waste dumping in the area. People will take like aggressive abandoned dogs and just leave them. Kind of a funnier one, an escaped emu, I guess, was wandering around in 2006 attacking people.
I love emus. They're so cute.
Like, there's lots of vandalism in the park. Like all of the rocks and the cliffs that are like famous spots, they're constantly having to try and clean the graffiti off. So that's like a big thing. But there was a woman that slid 80 feet down a cliff while she was spray painting and then broke her ankle. And it was like a huge rescue thing that was on the news.
She only broke her ankle?
Yeah.
That's so lucky.
Yeah. And then in May of 2016, they found a bunch of wire cables stretched across recreational trails that appeared to be intended to cause harm for motorbike riders.
That's terrifying.
So there's like supernatural lore, but there is actual creepy stuff here. Something else I thought was interesting was Lizzie Borden is from Fall River.
Oh,
interesting.
Yeah, I had not put that together when I started this, and I was like, oh wait, that's and I think the last census, it's a town of like 88,000. So it's grown over the years, but there's a lot that happens here. But it's just some of it's explainable, some's not. But
I just have to stay in her house.
Yeah, I knew that.
Which is so
it's weird.
Ugh, I don't know, man. I can't get into that.
Yeah, that whole
feels
story
a little too heavy.
Yeah,
it's a little much.
My favorite thing about these parks is a lot of them. Like I just looked up Freetown Park on Massachusetts like government website, and it's oh, download a trail map, Freetown, spray deck, and wading pool. And it's like, let's pretend this park's totally fine and normal.
That's like the Cecil Hotel when they renamed it and rebranded it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
You know, let's
I'm sure most of the park is nice.
Right.
It's just there's so much horrible stuff there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
weird to look at the government trying to sell it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there was little, because they're obviously not wanting to publicize a lot of this stuff, but one of the YouTube videos I found of people like venturing out and like ghost hunting, I think was the most compelling for me because they didn't find anything, which is fine, but there were also like no animals. Like they're deep in these woods, and the guy's got his thermal camera out, and one of the girls that's with them had made the comment, like, shouldn't there be like birds or squirrels or something? And there was absolutely no movement. It was just dead silent. Nothing was moving.
Ooh, that's eerie.
It was very creepy.
Like
but yeah, that's my synopsis on the state park there in Freetown, Fall River area.
That's wild.
I
That's
want
a
to read
lot of
more about
activity.
that.
Yeah, I know.
Cult.
So yeah, I'm
looking forward
excited
to
for that.
hearing more about the movie.
I was trying to find there is a teaser on YouTube that you can watch, and it's a 4-part docuseries. I'm trying to see if I can find a release date, but I know it was supposed to be May 16th on Epix.
Okay.
So yeah, that kind of sidetracked me because I was expecting to be talking more about UFOs and Bigfoot, and then when I hit that, it's like it kind of took front and center.
Yeah.
Well, and they say it's not true, but I guess they still occasionally find mutilated animals in the woods, and it leads some locals to believe that the cult is still active.
Yikes.
Really?
So, but
Interesting.
there's nothing to like prove or disprove that at this point.
Yeah. But people will hold on to that stuff forever.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, I feel like I'm feeling pretty good about how different all 4 of those were. So yeah. I mean, I definitely learned something new today, so that was fun.
Yeah, me too.
So ladies, before we end our episode, as we end all of our episodes, what's been casting a spell on you this week? What have you been enjoying?
Can I just say I got my second dose on a couple days ago, and it knocked me on my ass, but it was worth it. So I haven't put too much thought into anything recently because I literally slept all day for like 24 hours. But I'm just still so stoked that Panic Fest is this weekend, which I know by the time this airs, it'll be over. But if you aren't able to catch any movies at Panic Fest this weekend, I know that eventually they'll make their way to Armor or other theaters around you. So definitely check out the lineup and see if there's any you can catch near you.
Yeah.
So mine was staring me right in the face when I was trying to think about, and I'm currently reading Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I'm just about done with it. I may finish it tonight or tomorrow, but it is so good. If you like fantasy, it's a historical fantasy. There are some horror elements to it. It is not a horror novel, but it is really good, deep rooted in Mexican culture. And so far, like I said, I'm almost done, but would highly recommend that to anybody who likes reading that type of book.
I liked her book, Mexican Gothic.
It's sitting right under this one.
Yeah. I'll have to check out, because she's a good author. I'll have to check that out. Mine's also a book. I just recently finished Stephen King's new book, Later, and it was good. It was kind of like a combination of a few of his other books or characters in a way, but it's about a boy who can see the dead recently after they pass, and basically someone uses that against him and kidnaps him and tries to, I guess there's a crime element to it, but I just kind of like the way that he sort of approaches the afterlife and spirits in this book, like what they can and cannot do,
how they interact with him. And then Stephen King, has a lot of references. It makes it kind of meta in a way. Like he talks about the little boy in The Sixth Sense and how, that's different from this boy's experience and stuff. So it's pretty good. It wasn't my favorite, but it definitely kept me reading, and I read it in only a couple of days. So it was engaging. So I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I still think it's like worth checking out. And it's a shorter book of his. It was only like 250 pages or so.
Awesome.
Well, I'm gonna be the weirdo of the podcast. And basically all I've been doing with my free time lately is watching the reboot of Fruits Basket, which is an anime. The original one came out in like 2001, and they only did one season of it, so it was like a really condensed form of the manga. And so now it's on season 2. Season 3 just started in Japan, so it'll make its way over here shortly. But yeah, I'm pretty much loving it, and my husband likes to make fun of me because I'm watching this like romance anime.
Okay, I'm a sucker for that stuff, and I've heard really good things. Where can I watch that?
It's on Hulu. So, and they have the subs and the dubs. I'm a lot of people will look down on me because I'm a dub watcher, but I like to watch it while I'm doing other stuff sometimes. So I just, gotta have the dubs. But the dub is really good, and they used I think they used some of the same actors from the original to do the voiceover acting. So it's adorable. It's about like a girl who basically finds out on accident that one of her classmates is part of like the Zodiac family, and so there's all these people that are possessed by the Zodiac animals. So her classmate is possessed by the rat Zodiac, and so if they're hugged by someone of the opposite sex, they turn into their animal.
What?
And
that's so silly. I love it.
What about us Libras? We're inanimate objects.
Yeah, well, it's like the Chinese is it the Chinese Zodiac?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Oh,
like
okay.
The horse, the rat, the cat. Well, so and then
I'm the tiger.
The ox, tiger, all that. So,
gotcha.
As the anime progresses, you meet like more of the Zodiac members because it's like a secret, but they allow this girl to know. And then the other thing is that like the rat hates the cat, which is not part of the actual Zodiac, but is part of like the myth of the Zodiac because it was like kicked out of the Zodiac. So anyways, it's kind of like a love triangle show, but like it's also really like nobody ever kisses. Like I'm just like, can someone kiss please? Let's go.
They just hug.
But yeah.
But it has supernatural elements to it.
Yes, it does. It's very ridiculous, and I love it. So
it's not like Animorphs, though, right?
No, they literally like just poof into like the animal. Okay. Like it's like,
oh my god, what if it was like Animorphs? Oh, so weird.
So weird.
Haunts my dreams. No. But yeah, so that's what I've been watching. Thank you guys so much for listening to us talk about Fear of the Forest. We had a lot of fun looking up different spooky forests for you on Earth Day, and don't forget to recycle.
Yeah, please.
I mean, it's not on us to recycle, let's be real, it's big plastic's fault, and I blame big plastic, but we can do our part as we can. So, but we love the Earth, and if you would like to, check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Black Magic Coven. And please subscribe and leave us a review. This concludes the gathering of the Black Magic Coven.
You're listening to a Downright Creepy original on the Crickets Podcast Network.